Welcome everybody to the Brooklyn Rail's 74th Radical Poetry Reading. I'm Anselm Berrigan, the poetry editor for the Rail, and I have the pleasure of being your MC today for a reading featuring Stephanie Adams-Santos, Samia Bashir, Shayla Lawson, and Coleman Stevenson. And this reading is curated by Dao Strom, who will also be reading. This is a very West Coast lineup we have, so I especially appreciate those who are reading in the morning. It's not normal to give a poetry reading before noon, I don't think, but so maybe that'll make the energy new and strange. Before we get started, the Brooklyn Rail acknowledges Black Lives Matter and that here in New York, we are on Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and Shinnecock Indian Nation. We encourage you to check the chat for a living document of resources and actions. The Brooklyn Rail is a little over 22 years old and has been bringing together in a single monthly publication in print and online art, music, dance, film, theater, and literature, along with various social and political meditations. As a small nonprofit, the Rail can use anyone's support, and contributions would directly support our writers, guest artists, production staff, and operations here at the Rail. And you can check the chat for more information and links to donate if you're in a position to do so. And now I'd like to pass the mic to today's curator, Dao Strom. Please welcome Dao.
Hello, nice to see everybody. And I see some names of friends out there. It's nice. Thanks for joining us. I just want to say thank you so much to Samia and Stephanie and Shayla and Coleman for joining me for this one, and to the Rail for inviting me to curate. Thank you, Phong Hui, for creating this forum. I'm going to just read a little statement introducing just sort of why I chose these readers, and then we're going to read in alphabetical order by our last names, so really arbitrarily. I come to poetry by way of song, fragment, image, prose, performance, and through a translation of voice current across all of those realms. For me, the poem is not a definitive enclosure. My understanding of poetry is through the endeavor to make as well as to unmake. Poetry is a shape that cannot but continually shift, slip, change, evade, evolve. Poetry is a continual asking for the poet to listen to the poem's restless demands for its home that you're conceiving. The poets reading with me today are poets who I feel are also shapeshifters. We have in common that we all met in Portland, Oregon, but we also have in common our non-conformity to form, the kind of poets whose expressions, whose articulations cannot be contained or conveyed through words alone. I believe for each of us, in each our very particular ways, there likely runs some deep logic or some close held principles or experience that has necessitated becoming a shapeshifter, has necessitated becoming a master, a designer, creator, decider of our own shapes. It is in the company of these poet friends who have been my collaborators and mentors also that I have felt my own fractured, unruly ways with language finally received and befriended. I define hybrid or multimodal poetics as a kind of poetry in which language refuses to stay on the page or even bound solely to words. Language yearns perhaps for other types of embodiments, for mergers between sense faculties, yearns for other ways of reading and writing that might dissolve the page or even the poem, and remind us to read also with the rest of our bodies. Each of these poets inhabits poetry as a multisensory commitment. Collectively, they bring breath, body, music, mysticism, the alchemy of handwriting, symbols, imagery, color, ritual, text as a visual material into the field of poem making. Their work and these friendships have inspired me to be both more bold and tender in my own work, and to be continually willing to take further risks. Although you'll hear us read just poems in this space today, I also encourage looking at the full breadth of each of these makers' works, and just to see the full range of their voices across their mediums. I want to open up our reading space with an assemblage of lines that I drew at random from their books, and just to bring their voices together into the space. I cannot reach, though I can let wound me. Look, what is a thing of beauty if not us? I am a pretty girl in a world afraid of pretty people. You advocate for sublimation, but I will crush words between us. And I believe our first reader will be Stephanie.
Thank you, Dao. And hey, everybody, keep an eye on the chat. There'll be links dropped in related to each reader's work as we move through the reading. Yeah, our first reader is Stephanie Adams-Santos. She's a multidisciplinary writer and artist. Her work is rooted in the crossroads of ritual, ancestry, and environment, with a penchant for the weird, queer, and surreal. She's the author of several collections of poetry. Dream of Xibalba, winner of the Orison Books Poetry Prize, Swarm Queen's Crown, finalist for the Lambda Literary Awards, and The Sundering, winner of a New York Chapbook Fellowship by the Poetry Society of America. Stephanie's poems and prose have appeared in Orion Magazine, the Boston Review, Guernica, the anthology Speculative Fiction for Dreamers, among other places. She is a 2022 Ohala Ignition Fellow and is also a professional tarot reader and occasional instructor of poetry and divination. Please welcome Stephanie.
Gosh, thank you all so much for being here. It's so special to see so many faces and that I know and people I don't know. And thank you to the Brooklyn Rail and to Nick and Anselm for just creating this space and hosting us. And to Dao, that was such a beautiful intro. And I'd never thought of our connection, our web in that way. And it feels really special. It's almost like a homecoming today. I drew a tarot card before the reading. It was the world, and that just feels so lovely, for this coming back together. I think it's probably been like 6 years since we've all read in the same space, and those 6 years feel like 80,000. So thank you for helping bring it back together. I'm going to read a little bit today from the book Dream of Xibalba, which it's all one long poem told in many parts. You could call them fragments more than stanzas. And Xibalba is the name of the Mayan underworld. So the poem roughly follows the journey of a lost daughter of this underworld as she tries to recollect herself through visions and fragments in memory, which feels especially, present now after what Dao said about the ways that we kind of find ourselves through all of these fragmented forms. In the middle of your body, the dream is coming. You double over your work. In the petrified loom, a figure burns in the weft. Alone in her house, your great-grandmother is engulfed in skirts of fire. First, the story of it, then the memory of it, then her pain, her actual pain, walking in circles inside you, a corpse with backward feet, a loop of herself, weaving herself back, remembering herself inside another body. Cherubs, their big eyes gleam in the moon blue on their bare heads, the color of night. They climb down the darkness through the bedroom window to see you, to touch you, light in their hands, light in their eyes. A small man in the jungle of Tikal blesses himself with leopard's dung. In the shade of an achote shrub, he makes his cheeks red. Under your pillow, he leaves a mirror, a slab of black stone while you dream, an opening that never closes, where the old women of your head walk in procession, endlessly coming and going. Far away, the mountains conspire with their ghosts, the fossil beneath still cradling the empty forms. The psyches, where have they gone? Even extinction has its children. You've heard of flowers growing from nothing, standing up on stone, sucking blood from sunlight. In total darkness, bursts of jasmine float into flesh. In the midnight heat, the sun, its hands on you. In the florid orgasm in tomorrow's light far away, you see yourself faintly. At this hour, you lie beneath slabs of noise, cut down by helicopter blades and thrown together in the dark high above you. A cat's cry unravels in the air, the wind, the bruised grasses hissing, all sounds tangling in the hands of obscurity. Pressed to my window, you look madly for proof, but there is none. The pant of a dog or coyote propagates a flower. The bright red head of sleep floats to your breast. You dream all night of the room beneath your room, that bed made of water. You dream the ground shakes open, a rift full of flowers. The enormous blooms swallow your head, thorns bud from the stalk of your limbs. Light pools up behind the dam. Still you wither in this bed until at last something moves. The roots shake and sigh, though unwitnessed. My wife, are you nowhere? Kukulkan is waking. Must you carry the sight of the god alone stepping out of the dream? You write a few things down every day. You throw salt into the sink. It all dissolves. Your flesh beneath a veil caresses a void. Two vultures eat at the sight of the other's dissolution. Between them, words flay the air and come back wet, heads of thunder, red. A scrawl glistens in the book of the body. One eye weeps, washing itself. The other dreams. Here and there, a figure climbs high into the air, teetering on the edge. A siren, a slash of red burning through time. A moan hangs in the sky, a remora of clouds. Now look, at a certain hour when you pass behind the house, the young turkeys will melt into shadows, and you will see the long white veils of the dead, their glimmering slimes that reflect green light, and the pale flesh that breathes in the darkness of melons. The moon, who lives underground, will tug at your feet, pulling them backward. Midday smoke closes the sky, where the sun becomes the moon, a primitive eye, illegible gaze that blurs and possesses, passing over broken sigils strewn on the ground, the arms of trees are voided wands torn open for the dreaming of fire, fed by a bestial wind, wind that sucks the wines from a wrinkle in the air, wind that drinks blood from the spirit's open eye. Feral children howling in cages call back to the coyotes that descend from the hills, back and forth, their hunger and delirium, back and forth, the fire and the wind, the furnace and the ash, the long road home, this season of fire. At night, A woman crosses the courtyard with her hair down like a pelt. She smells of the river and jade that throbs underground, green brewed in a womb of stone, a lonely violet perfume, a bone smell. In the soft shuffling of her backward feet is the music of a past life, of nostalgia for living, a lullaby that rides sharp and high through the nose, piercing the brain. You fall into habits of sadness. How could you not with the burning rose that shrieks through your soul? You hail your own deformity this hour of night, the vestigial rope that grows from your head, whipping the air with lashes. You try to rein it in, tug it back from the baleful star, but it lives like a fisherman's hook, hauling its own wet life from the brink. Past an impenetrable oval, a painting of a rose, a single window opens and closes like the sound of a wing. You go from room to room without feet. Is the pain inside or out? In the night, your teeth are thrown across the floor. Your pre-Columbian memories made of bone, they fall across the bed. Little stela, gestures, gestures of bone, gestures of other bodies, gestures of hunger. You lie without limbs, your head grown on a stalk, your gaze falling toward the skylight where a red tunnel closes in. Soon it begins to rain. Sorrow weeps from the ceiling fan, filling the room with fog. In the morning, you will crawl over the broken pieces, piercing your knees, your hands, your tongue. You will make holes in your thoughts, windows and doors, and other stations of oblivion. And that's all I'm going to share today. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Stephanie. Our next reader is going to be Samia Bashir. Described as a dynamic, shape-shifting machine of perpetual motion, Samia Bashir is a poet, writer, librettist, performer, and multimedia poetry maker whose work, both solo and collaborative, has been widely published, performed, installed, printed, screened, experienced, and Oxford Commod, from Berlin to Dusseldorf, Amsterdam to Accra, Florence to Rome, and across the US. Sometimes she makes poems of dirt, sometimes zeros and ones, sometimes light. In 2002, she was a co-founder of Fire and Ink, an advocacy organization and writers festival for LGBT writers of African descent, with whom she worked through 2015. Bashir is the author of 3 poetry collections, most recently Field Theories, winner of the 2018 Oregon Book Award Stafford Hall Award for Poetry. Please welcome Samia to the rail.
Thank you, Anselm. Thank you all. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Dao. That was so beautiful. Thank you, Stephanie. Oh my God, I'm a buzz. Shayla, Coleman, I can't wait to hear you both. I'm gonna share a few kind of new things. We'll see what they do. Some days of alcohol and pastry. Blah, 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 there was a plague. Again. Listen, I'm too old to have lived through so much pestilence already, but grandmother called it better than the alternative. To live. You'd never know that so many of us do, despite ourselves. Everyone has a story. And when June asked us what we should do, those of us who did not die, I can only imagine what she'd say if I'd answered, lie around drunk and bake bread, make cookies, which is fine again, but like maybe all this alive time could maybe go another way. Put my foot in the grass, press toward grounding, pull back flesh like hot ice on the boiled side of melt. It was cold, it was hot, it blazed, and that was before the plague. Again. Ran across our viral land. Everywhere, people with all the anger, all the guns feel outnumbered. Listen, they are. I guess he did promise to build a wall. I guess we're all just supposed to talk about all this bullshit now. But the leaves this autumn, incredible. How they too flaunt their flames deep into December, like they know how fast we forget our own spilled blood. The canopy is me. See how I hover, how I don't so much block light as scatter it, how I kitten yarn batter it. When I come back around to meet myself, what will I say? Will I just assume I can swim until the current pulls me down? I guess. 2. As Faufier would say, if for just one day we didn't have to earn, for just one day, then who do we want to become? Browning and greening and the wetness of the recent rains, the way they set everything alight, the untoward way the raindrops flash to prick its bit of waning sunlight. And the garbage outside my window being loud. Poems making themselves up as I go. 3. That feeling when you know horrible things happened, but you can't remember them. That feeling when you remember horrible thing after horrible thing and still you think, nope, that's not it. That feeling when there's nothing left but feeling, no thought, just paralysis and feeling. That feeling when there's nothing left to feel and nothing in the lap for breakfast. 4. So it turns out I'm allergic to society as a whole. When in doubt, they say, go back in time. I mean, whiteness, I guess. When I want to feel safe, I figure I should want something else. Everywhere I go, everyone I see could be a shooter. It's stressful. My breasts don't fit into bulletproof vests, so 5. Tomorrow is another country. Even here, the philosopher's stone bottoms out unexpectedly. Tomorrow is not another country. Tomorrow is not even there. I can't forget water while I drown, so why does this silence engulf unseen and unsmelled? 6. This did not happen here, we insist through all the happenings. 7. Maybe this quiet is a star. Our outer space treaties are older now than my whole generation, just as outdated, just as orbited by garbage and left to rot from our every epizootic breath. It is our leaders say what it is. 8. In Rome, I had a red feather boa, Shayla. I'd tickle your nose with my loosey-goosey feathers. I ruled the stage, honey. Long gone now. So I'm gonna read it, thanks. I'm gonna read a piece that's coming out very shortly in this kind of fierce art book coming out by Darius D.A. Carter, based on Ernie Barnes's book, Sugar Shack. So this is a piece, everybody kind of took a small piece. You know, people know this painting because it was in the beginning of Good Times, right? So you see all these people dancing, and joy and dancing, and joy and blackness and light and dancing and juke joint greatness. And anyway, this is called Who's Osmosin Who? Suddenly, Uncle say, I keep looking at these two women up top. And then Uncle points to just the place I'd circled, just the spot I'd been dreaming on for months. I asked, you see two women dancing? Then, yeah, then, you know, this one, then finger wags the one in heels and starts to explain that thinks she's a woman. And I'm like, quiet, listening. It's the way, as the data farms say, that the one most marked femme is who Uncle explains for me. The way the gerrymandered geographies of gender marking are removed, replaced, unidentified, and then intuition exposed. Uncle bashfuls himself a bit. Uncle, not a bashful man. Bashfuls a bit and says, I don't know, through prodding switchbacks of thought, says, it's relative, I guess. And cousin, the DJ, hears music, sees geometry all in all through the mask shaft of diamond light. It's isosceles sunbeam beyond the point for two women mid-step. Just then, Aunt strolls in through the room's assumed equilaterality with a moving squint at the scene and shouts, joy! And starts dancing. Dancing. Aunt was at that party. Together, her movement said, we are that party. Us two women, those two men, talking about that nigga zooming his head in the corner, still sullen, understage, perched outside the light. By now, the only one not dancing. Where'd nigga find that chair? I think that's a white guy, someone said. Yeah, someone said. That's a white man. The only poem, which Roger said I'd have back home, and also own and Lee and my own lonely poem, like there's only one, like be alone is the worst kind of lonely, when back home, mine, a poem I make flip and shine and stretch, but like be passive about it verbally, you know, leave me some subjectivity. Wait, can I at least come home to my own goddamn subjectivity? Wait. Off track, it's the fact of the speed that the folks who say they're smarter than me concede I need, but all I know is the man still, but, and so, still, but, and so, and yet, oh, right. So Roger trains with his dick, right? But I don't mind it so much. A personality quirk. It gets the job done. Really, and shit. All right. Wait. Where the fuck are my meds, drugs, friends, lovers, cats, memories? Anyway. Whatever. I'm so lonely only. I forgot. Here's the thing. Things fall apart. I am sort of sleeping, then I am on fire. Undone, burned, stripped of skin. I feel so raw these days. Flattened, full of doubt, numb. Rats thrive in sewers, so maybe I'm thriving. It may seem simple enough, but my dreams don't say so. This, I think I know. No one notices me. Lost, alone, blind as a sewer rat, 6 feet back. Gelatinous, raw as a baby rat, shook, underdone, 2 full rats still hungry, rich rat, swimming, sewage, breadline rat, baker rat, transformed, stuck in a well. Thriving. burned into brick road, milepost, sign. Triumphant. I scream, but words burn like sky fire. Clammy, street rat, fell in a hole, stuck in a well. I rattle the pages, the cages. I rattle the cages of our children. Everywhere else is empty. I am fluent in fire, fluent in indigo miseries. I am fluent in the absence of heat, a rat on the street, sudden and melt. I am fluent in how time presses a body. Here's the thing I'm not supposed to say. I saw others skulk the dark like me. Simple enough. I skulk away a little more each day. Maybe there's intelligent life, but I'm not it. How will we survive this having a body? Trying to be intelligent life. Fireball struck and stuck. I study the crows who know this, having a body to fly. Almost a dream, a sign you're not supposed to notice, a path. Who can I be? Blame the apocalypse. It's melt, it's bend, it never ends. Thing is, things fall apart. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, but I know the meaning of a moment, like ours, burning. I'm almost sure I'm here, transformed, torn apart, average, boring, humdrum, no sound stays innocent, numb. Every day, the end of the world is now again, normal. I burn and remember having a body, how it feels, cold. If I hold no beauty in this slapdash world and tuck me away from the heat of the day, alone, I burn. Blame the humdrum numbness of the end of the world. I listen for wind. Intelligent life, where is it? No sound in innocent means root, way. I am not saying I'm a prophet, but I always travel slightly singed, pressed by time. 6 feet back, I find the me who's tall as a gum tree, the me with copper hair, causeway me, opening, expanse, eyes open, heart full of doubt. I strike my fireballs and burn, sort of beaming. Now volcano, now oil slicked river, stripped of skin, fluent in the press of time, body clammed, voice raw and syrup stripped, eyes open, sewer rat, thriving. No sound stays innocent. Rats. Footpath, corridor, clearing, and yes, the bushes burn like sky fire, and I decide to survive, claim every sunrise. I am dark as earth. Now I am the me with the bright yellow hair, me with a normal gait. Wait, normal? Do I know that word? Did I ever, is it normal to hang from a tree? Is normal an ability to breathe? Are normal these panic attacks? Does normal stand whole bodies back, tucked away from the heat of the day? Listen for how to survive this body. Face twisted, slightly singed, fueled by my own crisped flames. Condemned. I know the meaning of a moment. But here's the thing. Am I intelligent life? How could I tell? The crows know. I know I'm not road, I'm doorway. And when things fall apart, again, I'll be here, my rectangular shade of blue. I'm not supposed to talk about transformation, though. Not the me with the hollow cheeks, the me with the blood red stride, fluent in the need to dance, me with moles in 14 places. Here, having a body, me with 3 nose rings, normal. I grasp for a branch, normal. Me with the war wounds, I thrive. Gutter rat, the burning quiet of stars. Who else can I be? The crows know. I'll close with this short piece, which I will acknowledge I'm reading from the unseated space of my Black ass body. And this is because, again, the other day. It's called, listen, be tired of all this, I don't care. The thing about the guns, the always guns, is that they don't need to be fired. Chekhov was a fucking liar. If now was then, if then was now. Fold the space napkin up right and we're all liars anyway. Yeah, guns don't even need to be fired anymore. What they do to the body precludes them, my body anyway. Yeah, I'll say it. And I won't even make myself pretend you'll care. Anyone, my body, what the guns do to my Black body precludes a single firing. Don't fire. Don't. Shoot. See. Listen. You probably won't. So don't. Thank you all. I should say I put halfway up an image that was blazoned across Portland by Intisar Abiyoto, who I see in our thing, this beautiful mural that includes some poetry, including a quote that Dao read earlier. So thanks for this beautiful piece, Intisar.
Thank you, Samia. Our next reader will be Shayla Lawson. Shayla is the author of This is Major, Notes on Diana Ross, Dark Girls, Being Dope, I Think I'm Ready to See Frank Ocean, Speed Education in Human Being, and Pantone. She has appeared on OPB with Tiffany Comey, NPR's Livewire radio broadcast, The Special Report with Aretha Martin, Salon Talks with Dee Watkins, The True Romance podcast, At the Center for Fiction with Two Dope Queens, Phoebe Robinson, Storybound by LitHub, At the Strand with Ashley C. Ford, Memoir Monday, and the Tanzim August Art Festival in Berlin. She's a columnist at Bustle magazine and has written for ESPN, Guernica, Vulture, New York, and The Cut. Shayla is a McDowell and Yaddo Artist Colony Fellow and a National Book Critics Circle finalist. Please welcome Sheila Lawson.
Thank you, everybody. It's amazing to get to read with some of my absolute favorite people. It's so funny because we didn't meet, well, I mean, I was new. I moved to Portland in 2015. I moved out in 2018. And it's just like, when I look at this reading, I'm like, how do we all end up being family so fast? Like, I really consider everybody here, you know, part of my spiritual family. Like they're just such beings of light and each way that they bring to the world. And I'm just so grateful to be reading with all of you. It really warms my heart. Yeah, so I'm going to, you know, as Dao mentioned at the outset, we all tend to break form. So breaking form for me was the last book that I wrote was an essay collection. I'm going to read an essay. Last week, February 18th was the birthday of both Audre Lorde and Toni Morrison. Which should be a national holiday. And I was finishing up this book right around the time that Toni Morrison had died. What was interesting about it is that, you know, one of the things that we all also share in common is that we have a tremendous love of archival material and, you know, speaking to the unspoken. So I spent a lot of time reading through letters between James Baldwin and Toni Morrison, Lorraine Hansberry, lots of different people. And I had found a letter that was written by Terry McMillan asking Toni Morrison to blurb her book. And at the time, Toni Morrison was still alive. And it really encouraged me when I got the book in the form that I wanted it to, that I really wanted to reach out just to put that into the air that, hey, I saw this letter and I thought that I would write you a letter. And by the time that I had built up the confidence to do that, she was gone. And so in place of that, I wrote an essay to honor her. called Let Her Be Laughter. And before I begin reading it, I just was thinking about Stephanie's mention of pulling a tarot card. I have a Luso Clifton divination deck that I keep on my desk. And today the card that pulled up is "You Are a Flower That Has No Name," which I think very much speaks to this group today. Let her be laughter. I love myself when I am laughing. And then again, when I am looking mean and impressive. Zora Neale Hurston. As a child, I loved Song of the South, a 1946 Disney adaptation of the Uncle Remus folktales featuring Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and the Tar Baby. The film combines animation with live action footage, a feat that used to look like magic to me. In the film, Hattie McDaniel smiles broadly while she bakes pie in the kitchen, essentially reprising her Oscar-winning role as Mammy from Gone with the Wind, replacing the acerbic wit of that character with placid singing. Eventually, in the late 1980s, Song of the South was banned from distribution because of its racist depictions of happy plantations where infantilized slaves lived in peaceful harmony with their white masters. I must have seen the film right before it was vaulted on VHS or the Disney Channel during the film's 40th anniversary in 1986. One of the most memorable moments in the film was its rendition of the Uncle Remus folktale about the Tar Baby. The Tar Baby was a doll made from pitch and turpentine, whom the villain Brer Fox creates in order to lure the story's hero, Brer Rabbit, into a trap. Tar Baby, a Black girl, cannot speak. The Black girl is a construction. From a young age, I understood this is a presumption made broadly about dark girls, that our greatest value to a story is often how well we fit into the background or the conflict. Yet, I always laughed when Brer Rabbit passes the Tar Baby on the road and gets stuck. This is my favorite part of the story. There is something subversive about being sticky. This too says something about dark girls. Brer Rabbit says, "Good day," to the Tar Baby. Because she does not respond, cannot respond, he punches her in the face. I liked this part of the story too. I knew what it was like to stay quiet because you have to, because you have been told to, and still be punched in the face. I like to believe the next time this happened to me, I would be like the Tar Baby. My stillness incisive, my skin adhering. In the end, it is me who is safe and it is them who get stuck. For most Black people, Tar Baby is a racial slur that stems from classic American literature like Little Black Sambo or Uncle Tom. When I read Toni Morrison's novel, Tar Baby, I saw where the author might have wrestled with the Tar Baby's implications as a child, like I did, and derived a certain satisfaction from the tenacity as conceit. Morrison once said to an interviewer that she used it as a title for her fourth novel to represent how Black women hold things together. Her mouth in a wry smile. In Tar Baby, Morrison casts a Black girl named Jadine Childs as the center of the novel, not as a plot device. She is the novel's protagonist, but is also deeply unlikable. This is what makes me care the most about her. Because just like Brer Rabbit, most of the time, I just want to punch Jadine in the face. Jadine is self-interested and materialistic. Jadine doesn't believe in the white disenfranchisement of Black men. She despises motherhood and eschews any association with it. Jadine evades every opportunity to look after the aunt and uncle who raised her, who are servants in the home of a rich white man. She defends this rich white man who paid for her education at the Sorbonne in Paris, and instead of putting her expensive liberal arts degree to use, she works in Europe as a fashion model and appears comfortable with, or at least ambivalent about, the ways she is fetishized. At the end of the novel, Jadine visits the former plantation house in which she was raised, where her adoptive parents still work as veritable slaves, presumably to say goodbye, but in all likelihood just to retrieve an expensive sealskin coat before fleeing back to Europe. If Remus's Tar Baby, when gifted with language, turns out like Jadine, it seems little wonder why the rest of literature has always made her remain the personification of a tar-sticky silence. But Morrison gives her mouth. Why? I'd argue because although Tar Baby was published in 1981, Jadine feels like an emissary from the future. A place and time in which a Black girl can be unlikable and still be the center of attention. This is important to me because we are still vying for a world in which even a likable Black girl can command any attention at all. Society prefers that we use our tongues to sing rather than develop sharp observations, that we smile instead of laugh. When I think of Jadine, of her audacity in defying expectations, this is for me the very essence of delight. I feel Jadine is rooted in delight that bypasses our everyday use of the word and takes us back to its etymology, stemming from the Latin delectare, which derives from the same word as charm. What delight truly means is the capacity one has to distract, to detract, to pull away. This is Jadine, the difference between a smile meant to appease and a laughter meant to unsettle, a difference in the use of delight. I often smile to prevent people from being afraid of me. There is, for instance, the grin I painfully affixed to a 9-to-5 workday. It began at my first full-time architecture job, a gig I took shortly after returning from Italy. I'd moved back in with my parents in Kentucky and was saving up money to move to New York. I'd stare at a screen drafting bathroom details, repetitively inserting toilet fixtures and the design for a number of certain styles of commodes into CAD drawings. I was in my early 20s, about Jadine's age. There was nothing about working at a desk that pleased me like Venice and the delightful internship I'd held at the Pueki Guggenheim Museum. What's wrong? My white colleague might say, peeking his head over the top of the desk divider. There was nothing the matter with me. When I concentrate, my face appears stern and focused. But this wasn't what he wanted to see of me. He should have been more worried when I got lost in a delighted face, part chuckle, part daydream. In those moments, I was back in Campo San Barnaba, kissing other expats under streetlights and regularly leading tours through museum's collection, an expert in modern art. What sounded like a dream was actually a memory, one that made me smile in earnest. Unlike Jadine, I would never be the type of person to say that Europe is a place where my darkness flourished. But what I can say is I flourished because the provocation in my darkness set me apart. I was sticky and I liked it. I liked the way, like the Tar Baby, it wasn't quite right. I loved the Tar Baby because although she was silent, she seemed smarter than the villain who made her. I don't remember any scene in Tar Baby in which Jadine smiles, but she inspires in me a deep laughter. Delight played loud. She lounges naked on the bed in that sealskin coat while her aunt and uncle labor downstairs. The image is perverse. There were many times in the novel where I cringe at Jadine's behavior, but she possesses both a patience and a petulance I admire. She hears the other characters calling to her, but answers to no one. At the end of the book, she leaves the handsome prince to find her own destiny. I have done this myself a few times. As the Tar Baby, though, Jadine is also the glue that holds characters in the novel together. The adoptive parents who adore her, the white sponsor who desires her, the white wife who aspires to be her, the lovers who get lost in her grasp. When Morrison says that the Black girl holds the world in place, I don't believe she is saying we are meant to hold the world together like tape, to uphold, to stitch the existing structures back into place. I believe she is saying that we are adhesive in the ways that we are self-sacrificing and supportive, but also provocative and threatening. We absorb, we arrest, we suffocate, we attract and defy, we disrupt, we delight. It is January 15th, 2018, and in upstate New York, a middle school, 4 Black and Latina girls were headed to their school cafeteria for lunch, laughing. Unnerved by their excitement, the school's assistant principal demanded the girls remove their clothes so they could be probed for drugs. They were strip searched. The girls were 12 years old. This news story didn't surprise me. When I was in elementary school, the only thing I wanted to be was quiet. In Kentucky's tightly wound Bible Belt, I associated silence with piety. I was a bright child, an enthusiastic student. I desperately wanted the people who taught children things to like me, but I knew I was terribly unlikable. Sometimes I still feel like this. I often associate this dislike with my insatiable desire to know, reminded of how the serpent tempted Eve with fruit by saying to her, if she only ate from it, she would become wise. She did, and learned she was naked. I see this too as a kind of laughter. The pleasure of knowing brings me delight. Laughter is a form of embodiment. It requires the power of one's ribs and diaphragms, the respiratory and circular systems. When you're unhealthy, you might be able to smile, but it can be very difficult to laugh and be in physical pain. NBC News reported that the white assistant principal who ordered the strip search claimed she was afraid to be alone with the 12-year-old girls, and so enlisted a school nurse. During the ensuing police investigation, it came out that the assistant principal and school nurse humiliated and shamed the girls by making derisive comments about their developing bodies as they disrobed. Comments described by Governor Andrew Cuomo at the time as traumatic sexual harassment in his official public statement. Moreover, the nurse described the 4 girls as loud and disrespectful, as having attitudes, language that, according to NBC News, evokes all too common stereotypes. During the 1990s, films about white children who had attitudes were very popular. The movies featured either fictional or real-life child prodigies, children who knew things, searching for Bobby Fischer, North, and Matilda. I was obsessed with Jodie Foster's film Little Man Tate from the moment my parents took me to see it. There's a scene in which a child genius, Fred Tate, constructs a collapsible dodecahedron out of pencils and rubber bands. A few weeks later, I built the exact same structure from communal supplies at school. I proudly displayed it on my desk for at least 2 weeks. My teacher should have marveled at that construction, and perhaps briefly did, but a day came when the whole class got lost in a rowdy, raucous wave of laughter, and our teacher lost her temper and shouted at me, sitting in the front row. She demanded I destroy the dodecahedron to put all the pencils back. I did it. I wanted so badly for her to like me. Everyone had laughed, but I was the one who got punished. The student my teacher adored was Bethany. Bethany was the amiable child of a Baptist preacher from Georgia who joined us a few months into 5th grade. Bethany was plump, a half-foot taller than all the other 5th graders, and an out-of-towner. I'm sure the transition was hard on her, but Bethany was white, and I was not a quiet child. Bethany showed me all the ways I was not beloved. Our teacher would praise Bethany the way Bethany spoke, barely above a whisper. During free time, for absolutely no reason I could see, Bethany would break out into soft hymns. Instead of scolding her, our teacher, who was Catholic and had mentioned to us offhandedly that she was in the midst of a messy divorce, would praise Bethany's singing and clutch her heart. When it came time to answer questions in class, I would shoot up my hand while Bethany held her palms together like a prayer book. The teacher would call on her anyway. Well, Bethany would begin in her southern lilt, I believe when I'm in church with all my church friends singing. I was confused by the pride our teacher radiated whenever Bethany rambled on because it seemed clear to me that she didn't know much. Can you believe it? Bethany said one day, coming up to me overjoyed. Our teacher had selected Bethany as Citizen of the Month for the 2nd month in a row. I kept my lips shut. My silence disappointed her, but it was my inability to stay quiet that always got me in trouble. I was not a preacher's daughter, but I was a child of a very devout household, as exemplary as any preacher's kid, as any white student. I knew my Blackness marked how far my young body had already fallen from biblical perfection. They couldn't see me as an 11-year-old, especially through my audacity. When I spoke, they saw J. Dean. outspoken and decorous, knowingly rubbing her naked body into the ink of a black sealskin coat. By that winter, I'd started developing tension headaches. I was convinced it was due to the visible mold in my classroom, and convinced my mother of it too. She fought for weeks to have me transferred to another classroom, and during that time, I stayed at home frequently, worried and anxious under the covers of my bed. Looking back now, I see I was sick because I was trying to explain to myself the pain I felt to try and fit my guitar into a box. I did not have the language to explain how my stickiness felt to me, that I felt like I was no good, that I was traumatized. It was the strangeness of watching her once joyful 12-year-old stop playing music, stop playing with makeup, start staying in bed all day, and start trying to hurt herself that alerted Chandeliera Silva, the mother of one of the 4 strip search middle school girls that her daughter had experienced trauma. According to an interview with Essence magazine conducted with Silva, no one at her daughter's middle school informed her or the other parents about the strip search. The parents were never asked permission for their daughters to be undressed by school officials, nor were they informed afterward that it had taken place. It was only after Silva and the other parents had witnessed the physical, emotional, and psychological toll the day had taken that they finally extracted the story from their daughters. This is the story of the tar baby. This is what happens to our girls, to the things they take delight in, to the ways we charm and distract. Like Brer Rabbit, the world punches us, rips through us, tries its best to pull us apart. I've known that I've finally mastered the task of becoming a quiet person in my mid-30s, the day an advertising agency I'm working at brings in a photographer to take staff headshots. I apply my plastered smile and face to the camera. Click. I strike another pose, trying to glare into the camera, looking cold and imposing, but this too is nothing like me. Can you do anything else? The photographer asks. Like what? I say. I don't know. Laugh, he says. Laugh. And I do. I laugh, hesitantly at first and then sincerely. My laugh is not a smile. It is an intractable happiness. It is like something to which God has adhered delight to, as the scriptures say, make a joyful noise. There is a time for quietness, yes, but we have been brought forth through song and the explosion of stars. Us beautiful throated beings, who dare steal that bright bird from inside us? I could still hear it when I see that photograph, the sound of my own laughter, my deep and pleasurable delight. The sound is a heavenly one. Within it, you'll hear Zora and Hattie and Jadine. It digs its fingers into the tar dark earth we are rooted to. It knows things. It says, let there be an end to silence as goodness. Let there be loud, dark girls. Let those girls hold giddiness in their bellies until it becomes a thunder roar. Let their sound be our holy book. Let there be no end to their stickiness. Let us cling to them. May they disrupt and destroy. Let our dark girls be delight. And God said, let there be light. Thanks.
Thank you, Shayla. And now our next reader will be Coleman Stevenson. Coleman Stevenson is the author of 3 collections of poems, Light Sleeper, Breakfast, and The Accidental Rarefication of Pattern number 5609. Several books about the tarot, including the Dark Exact Tarot Guide and a book of essays on creativity accompanying the card game Metaphysic. Her writing has appeared in a variety of publications such as Seattle Review, Mid-American Review, Louisiana Literature, Tarot.com, and the anthology Motionless from the Iron Bridge. In addition to her work as a designer of tarot and oracle decks through her company, The Dark Exact, her fine artwork exhibited in galleries around the Pacific Northwest focuses on the intersections between image and text. Please welcome Coleman Stevens.
Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you to Brooklyn Rail for having us, for hosting this. Dao, thank you so much for including me in this like dream team lineup. I'm really honored and humbled to be reading with you all today. And just to all the readers already, just incredible work as always. I'm gonna start with just 3 poems from my last collection, Light Sleeper. These are my favorites from this book. They aren't exactly a series, but in my mind they go together in some way. And then I'll read a couple of new poems that I've just completed. This is what the morning is. If it is, it barely is, almost isn't. I'm almost, but almost not here. Surprised at first light to be still or again until the half-dead refrigerator starts its whine and the rest of the ether dissipates. Solid now. What I really want to do is go so far back down into the dark dream I can't get back up and have to travel through the other side. I want to find out what kind of world lies under this sleeping city, maybe with trees growing from the ends of roots, spreading their own roots into the edges of life as we know it to be. Maybe there is even air down there, though probably no one needs to breathe. Sometimes at night, I'm almost there, but the panic of having forces me back into my body. Name for me one thing that doesn't wrinkle, doesn't bend. Everything will with the right pressure. I am not so foolish that I don't know what isn't. I just couldn't tell what you actually wanted. It was a rattlesnake waiting anyway, some kind of rattlesnake business, thinking the path was clear or that it was a path at all. Energy moves on either side of a moment, but the moment itself is stale. Thank you for putting this desert into me. There are some plants that will only flower there, lotuses of fire and air, dream things with yellow and white heaped up crowns on the heads of spiked May queens, beastly children at play. Cannot be sustained. Because my fear is an animal in its own right, it gnaws at bindings. Because you might prefer many to one or zero to any, no more pictures were requested. Love is not natural. It is a dazzling threat that asks an excess of questions. What are you up to? What card did you pull today? Do I still come talk to you in your actual dreams? I did not knowingly penetrate the borders of your consciousness, though I would like to have gotten in there endosymbiotically in the way that chloroplasts are primary endosymbionts of plants, providing energy by generating sugars, or the way that Euphyla amblystematis grows exclusively on the eggs of the spotted salamander. Are we afraid of being enveloped, consumed? What is freedom? Everything changes. In the movie we each watch a second time, deer sprout flowered antlers, throats rip open to let new things grow inside. But first, there is resistance, suspicion of motives. No one is being honest. My glowing cells spark like neon suns, divide in so many twos. By the time you get here, I will have become someone else, altered by divisions and by visions, the secret world I found beneath crystal trees. Tell me soon before I start running. Tell me before I cross the field and turn into a tree. A sudden swerve. It became available, this truth, that innocuous things could swarm at any moment. You and the world retreated, though not together, Were the budding branches of plum trees still the long, cold arms of winter? In the sudden snow, they snapped, and the edges of what you'd called essential solitude were frayed like the splintered ends of those limbs and impossible to root. You returned to your faraway house, even with the sky so unpredictable, and even with the facts of mystery confirmed by mysterious alignment of our tangible twin worlds. Below every surface is a well of feeling. You moved your body carefully along the meniscus, braced for the next acquisition after the fallout, after the swarm settled back down, cloaked itself again in the everyday. I'll read these two new poems. This one is called How to Witch Water. And it starts with a line from Lucille Clifton's poem, Water, Sign, Woman. Water will come again if you can wait for it. But if you cannot wait, learn how to feel the vibrations of a forked twig in your hands. Get to know how it points, hear where it's taking you, be willing to go down any path to the river, to the creek, to the well beneath that you can't see, but the charmed wood knows is there. And if it leads you to haunted places, still you have to go. There is something to be said for stepping into terror, into the fog, entwining the trees across the field, into the open space ringed by trees, into a perfect halo of dappled light, into the fog, damp and cold, water in the air being water. Coax the water down, collect it in the wells of your hands. Let it spill over into a pool where you stand. Give up your old life. Animals will drink from you. Women will wash their hands in your streams. Men will cry at your feet. Become a fountain, and the living rod will sink into the dirt and sprout a willow. This last one is called How to Wear a Crown of Bones. Carry me across the valley of unknowing until I know, saddled on the back of time. A moth at the window is trying to get out. It wakes me up, tick, tick, the grandfather clock. The past leaves its carcass to feed us all in times of scarcity, but gnawing teeth change the nature of the bones. Carry me across the valley of unknowing until I know. The taste of a bruise will travel through the whole apple. Cut it off early, cut it off. My hair is growing again. A spider makes its way across the rug. Watch it crawl, then take the spider outside gently. Keep buying dresses for the day that will come. Keep them on the rack, a line of boneless cells. To mark time, the moth dries out on the windowsill, accumulating dust while losing its own. Carry me across the valley of unknowing until I know. Go on for a long time, as long as it takes. Take the clean bones of your memories and form them into a crown. Carry me across the valley of unknowing until I know. The knife you ordered is on the way. Learn how to part the glass, to let things out, let things in. Take the crown of bones and place it on your head. Tiptoe through the rooms so you don't wake yourself up. The knife, etched with tulips, eats the air. I know what I know without thinking it. Beastly, close my teeth around the words. I hover, I cover, I cower, I crave, I part the air, carve out a landscape, enter it and seal it. Where there is silence, I wait underneath it until I bend to the weight. I am like snow, slow in response. I bend, I break, I cave, I am not. Then I focus, I pave. That's everything. Thanks so much for listening, for being here with us this morning on the West Coast, this afternoon on the East.
Thank you so much, Coleman. And now we're going to hear from Dao Strom, who's the curator of this terrific reading. Dao Strom works with 3 voices, written, sung, visual, to explore hybridity and the intersection of personal and collective histories. She is the author of Instrument from Fonograf Editions and its musical companion Traveler's Ode from Antiquated Future Records. I'm getting to say a lot of terrific titles and names of things today. I like Antiquated Future Records. Also, bilingual poetry art book, You Will Always Be Someone from Somewhere Else from AJAR Press. And she's the author of a memoir, We Were Meant to Be Gentle People, and song cycle, East West, and 2 books of fiction, The Gentle Order of Girls and Boys and Grass Roof, Tin Roof. Born in Vietnam, Strom grew up in the Sierra Nevada foothills of California and lives in Portland, Oregon. She's co-founder of 2 collective art projects, She Who Has No Masters, with a parentheses around the S there at the end, and De-Canon. Please welcome Dao Strom.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Thorell. Thank you so much to the other readers. My heart is like in my throat, which I don't know what that means, but I have such a fondness for all of you, and it's so wonderful to hear your voices this morning. It's been really nourishing for me, and just thank you for bringing yourselves to the space, because you're all amazing, and I feel very fortunate to have you in my circle of poetic, I guess, poetry friends. As Shayla was saying, it was sort of a brief period of Portland time that we all like kind of were in the same space together. So I'm going to read some new work. I've actually been working on this for a while, but it's not in any book or anything yet. I guess I think of it, the title is, I made a composite word. It's called Mother Wound, or I guess you could pronounce it Mother Wound. And it does explore some contemplations of the archetype of the mother. And then just also, for me, that goes into like just contemplating the Vietnamese feminine. And I say feminine in like the most complex, like, I guess, consideration of that, not essentialist at all, but just what that involves. There's a lot of mother reverence, and sort of like in Vietnamese culture, there's this strong archetype of, you know, I guess the mother or the woman figure as very self-sacrificing. And there are instances where that's sort of also been transposed into a form of nationalism, where, you know, the woman or the person or the, you know, entity sacrifices for the nation. And some of this is just my contemplation from my perspective, and intergenerational, and a little bit maybe in consideration of my actual mother, who didn't always fit that traditional archetype. And it's a little bit thornier of a depiction of this archetype, but I'll just see how it goes. Called Mother Wound or Mother Wound. It's true, nothing ever dies. On occasion, from within the labyrinth, a stab, a peal, a punctuation mark of the loneliest kind of untrained singing escapes. Although she claims herself one of those with intellectual luxury enough to read the whole book about the communist spy. To name intellect as luxury means, she denotes, not everyone has it, luxury and or intellect. Also that she objects, though also accepts, even expects of others a chiefly emotional knowledge of the subject matter. Equation beneath abjection of the collective emotional body equals 4+ decades times a world education via severance. Living by feeling fades to a retrograde knowledge, next to an exponential capacity to conjure networks of openings and corridors behind which one then may minotaur the heart. Asian woman survivor tactic, Buddhic presenting smile beneath plastic visor. What survives inside a survivor? In private though, I'm sure of it, she slips bacon between the bars, for there is an animal child inside every one of us. but is triumph the not caging of our animals inside, which implies rather a fear of being incapable of taming anything. But once you learn to harness them, they walk with you. They might follow. You learn the warmth of a mane brushing against your hip. Sometimes they will carry you. This is a different kind of luxury entirely, I think, and it has no intellect. Myths of round things that receive things, baskets and plates, bowls and wounds, other desirable cavities. The cult of mother reverence, I believe, is quite strategically linked to that of patriarchal dominance. I'm talking about a culture of pieties and deferences. I'm talking about the separation alleged between civility and the violence deemed necessary to civilize. Myths about the tirelessnesses of selflessnesses. Or that one about the wife who waits dutifully for returns. For so long, she turns into a rock. My mother was no rock, nor did she pine nobly, hair blowing in the wind. I too, no rock in waiting. Because sometimes you get this idea, due to the shape of our eyes or the softness of our skins, that nothing roars inside. I'm talking about fire and ice in the veins, and about legacy, and about the eradicating course of history. I'm talking about a millennium's worth of violent self-undoings, and that long snake of waiting for one's time that feels like it may never come. Women as flag bearers, and how the light dapples and graces them. In a cultural construct where men's wills and whims dominate, how strategic is it to give the other party that one that might construct things differently, pleasing yet seemingly important roles? And what could feel more pleasing than being placed in the position of beauty? What more important than upholding virtue and timber of allegiance for a whole circumscribed nation? It's the same sun, you know, for north or south, on this side of the seas or that. Nationalism is a useless thing, a vile, destructive thing, said the famous Scandinavian American actor on the BBC interview on TV in the hotel room in Cambodia. And I turned toward the TV then, surrendering just a little, wishing a beautifully neutral white man really could save me. Truth is, I learned something once in the snow. I had left the majority of my belongings in my mother's house by the sea to come north with 4 shirts, 1 coat, no furniture, accompanied only by my son, our cat, and the man I just married. I learned that what the trees have to teach, and hence nature's lessons, can only be received, not given, not granted, and never thrust upon one. And this is the kind of teaching the world had lost. I could not heal my relationship with my actual mother, and so I resorted to standing in quiet glens in the Alaska woods and letting snow fall into my hair instead. I was trying to heal the larger relationship, I believed, or so I told myself. We were surrounded by the families of men on that road above the Gastineau Channel, the neighbors on either side, both sides, Vietnam veterans. You see how even in the far north, I could not escape repercussions of my birth war, my war birth. My mother came to visit in the summer and we argued about Vietnam. Same arguments we'd been having for years, sitting this time in hard plastic yellow seats in an Alaska ferry terminal, glacier meltwater reflecting cut glass blue onto wide windows. Let's just say it's complicated to critique war in the abstract to a war refugee. What is the part of the story of Vietnam, South Vietnam, I ask her, that you feel has not yet been told? There is fire in her eyes as she replies, we are fighting for our freedom. Moments like these, I do not point out it's the same rhetoric on all sides. I cannot speak honestly with my mother about how I see language, nor about the vagaries surrounding a word like freedom. And so often I don't speak. We walked in a small town 4th of July parade. Near the end of her visit, my mother broke out in shingles on her arms. On that visit, I did not introduce her to our neighbors. Mosquitoes are thick by the water in summertime in Alaska. I'll just read a little more of this part and then I'll close with something else. Post-war, the decapitated head to climb up inside of after the body of war is only natural, is only normal. Pulling oneself up into a decapitated head being one way to escape an overly mired life of the body. Especially in times when what is being done to the bodies is being done again and again, is impossible to be undone, is and has been too long beyond our power to exit. Mother, the books you wore to escape the war you wore, French literature, existentialism. I understand now the quandary between solidaire ou solitaire was never just semantic. It lived in you. Hard to describe, benefaction of, elevation into philosophies, tragic comedic comprehension, a survival mechanism. I was born in the wake of. And I'll just close with a passage from Instrument, which is actually my last book, which was published by Fonograf Editions and also has a musical counterpart in an album that was put out by Antiquated Future Records. And this is sort of a passage that falls into some of the same contemplations. Sometimes, unthinking, her tongue slips and she speaks a single phrase in Vietnamese, a language her children cannot understand her in. What this reveals, I think, is how much she must be most of the time vigilantly keeping at bay. And what brings it on for her, this slippage, this momentary letdown, this relinquishing in effect of the vigilance of English, for the unconscious re-emergence of the tenderer language. We are driving down a street in Portland, Oregon, or more precisely, I am driving, she is in the passenger seat, she is visiting me. We've not been talking about anything, and then, but she does not follow up or translate or catch herself. So I can't help myself. I pointed out to her, do you realize you just spoke to me in Vietnamese? Sometimes her response to moments like these will be defensively coy. Yeah, and so what? I asked her, what did she just say? Something about the leaves of the passing by trees, the leaves we are driving beneath, the leaves scattering their shadows across our laps, that they are pretty. I'll stop there. Thank you. Thank you, Anselm. Thank you, Nick, for hosting us. And thank you so much for the readers for being here with me.
Thank you, Dao, and thank you, Stephanie, Samia, Shayla, and Coleman. We had sort of batted around the question of a Q&A before we got started, and I don't know if y'all feel like doing that, but I am just sort of gently curious as to how y'all met, if you don't mind talking about that a little bit. It's nice to have such a group of friends who seem to all have met in the same place in recent years together today.
Does anyone else want to chime in? I can remember where I met each of you, and I actually I wrote a hybrid book in 2015, or I released it in 2015 that I've been working on for a while, and I honestly didn't know anyone before that point. I felt really, really alone in doing hybrid work, or I just and I think it was after I released that project, I took a class at the IPRC that Coleman Stevenson was teaching that was image text work specifically. And I took it because I thought I just had an instinct, I'm gonna like this person, this teacher. And that was sort of an opening to me to start to meet other people in the poetry community, which included Stephanie. I think Samia, I met you after a reading at Reed. It was something else. It was
something else, but yeah, we were at a party and I
library.
remember.
Yeah, it was a late night library.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And I was immediately infatuated with what you were telling me about your work and had to go find it instantly.
Yeah. So, and Samia was instrumental, and you invited me to do an event at Reed, and I did this crazy performance art project, which involved like a box and being wrapped in paper. And I would not have been able to do that without your like just permission in a way. And then also the collaboration with Samia curated a poetry performance at TVA Festival in 2017 that I was invited to be a part of, which was also amazing. And yeah, really like just, you know, inspired me to try things I probably wouldn't have done without that company collaboration. So, and I just want to say hi to Intisar too, because Intisar has been a part of our Portland Intisar Abiudo, who Samia mentioned too. It's just like all of you have done amazing things at Poetry Press Week too. So I feel like somebody should talk about that.
That's all very cloudy. I can't remember how it all came together, but I'm from Portland, but I had been away for so long, and I had done my MFA on the East Coast. I didn't find a community there in poetry. No shade to the East Coast, but I didn't find the same warmth. And then coming back home, I think it was probably around the same time, Dao, I had been kind of hermited in my own stuff, and then found this really lovely, welcoming, tender community that just was so easy. There was, you know, it just happened so organically. I'm really grateful for it.
I met Stephanie and Shayla both through a mutual friend. You know, one of those things where your friend calls you up and says, oh, I just think you should know this person, which I'm sure we've all been there. And like, usually my first thought with that is like, oh, you do? Okay, I'll go. And I've never been so glad as in both of these cases to have gone to those coffee dates. Yeah, definitely.
I think organic is really, I mean, Stephanie said organic, and that feels so much like the way all of these relationships came together, kind of finding each other's work, and then the way that we kind of let that in. For me, I can speak to, you know, letting what Stephanie's doing into my body, letting what Dao is doing, Coleman, Shayla, the conversations we have about things, the kind of moments that we're like sitting over a dining room table, having like writing dates or swapping something. It's been organic and in the best possible way.
And I'll just mention Poetry Press Week, because that is something that happened in Portland for a short while. It was a sort of, somebody else can correct me if it's like inspired by Fashion Week, but it's essentially a poetry performance where like the poets choreographed a whole performance that happened. And Shayla did this amazing thing involving voice and dance and singing, and Intisar also did something with dance. And Stephanie built an altar. And I know, Coleman, you did one too the previous year that I didn't see. So it's just like some of that, like seeing that and seeing people use visuals and like movement was just a really, you know, like I was like, wow, there's something else happening with poetry. And
that's
Also,
what I love about all of you. Oh, sorry, Steph.
No, just Dao, you should mention at some point the De-Canon too, because I think that also helped create a really beautiful nest for a lot of things. But sorry.
Yeah, De-Canon was something that I curated with another poet, Neil Aiken, who is a Canadian Asian poet who no longer lives in Portland also, but it came about right at 2017. And I think that everyone was feeling a certain amount of urgency. And we came up with this idea to curate a library of books by all writers of color. And this also turned into a community space, and we had events within it. Yeah, all of these all of these poets in this mix have participated in some of those events or been present at the library. And that was like a moment of community that I had not yet experienced in Portland also. So.
That was such a beautiful space. I can't remember who had the, because when we say books and library, I don't think it really gets the sense of like, it was a double height space in which artist had like the typewritten ticker tape. There's a huge piece that was going
the Asemic writing, which is Sam Rojas Chua, which another Oregon-based poet and an artist, really, like another person who writes in that space of like writing that is also visual and does these Asemic writing. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that term right, but they would be like, there was one that was a long scroll, it was really beautiful. And we did have an exhibit of like image text works in that space.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've always been inspired by when it comes to this group is that these are all also, women who've managed to make spaces that take up whole galleries. And and we saw the wall that Samia presented, that there's this love of the space of a library or a book being beyond the space of just pages or something that we can flip through. And I think that's just a really phenomenal part of what ties this particular group together as well, is really decanonizing what literature can look like what a space can look like, what a poem can look like. I think Samia's got another, that was a collaboration that you did with a fine artist, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's up right now. Yeah, that's Allison
Yeah,
Saw.
yes, that was the piece you did with Allison Saw. It's really, yeah. And Coleman and Stephanie have just both done like big gallery shows. Like Stephanie has written for television. Like you can find the work that is being done by this group in lots of really decanonized spaces. So that was a really special moment to me as well. And Poetry Press Week was also curated by created by another Portland woman, Liz Mel, who has done a lot to increase the profile of poetry in Portland and give us opportunities to share our voices in really interesting ways. Yeah.
Is Poetry Press Week something that has stopped, or is it postponed because of the pandemic, or is it still happening?
It's paused, but
Yeah.
there's definitely still discussions around it potentially having another future life.
That would be wonderful.
It would be incredible.
I hope it does.
They took it to Miami one year. I think it's something that I think is still ongoing, and I hope comes back, because it was really fantastic event and really kind of like a few nights event, following that Fashion Week model and bringing people in to write about the work and talk about the work and spur a conversation. And I thought it was really fantastic.
So true. Like those years that it was active here are still they're just so special. They just had this glow about them. There was so much happening. There was so much excitement about poetry and also the performance of poetry. And that's part of what attached me to all of you, is that you are performers of your work in lots of different ways. Very engaging when you read, and it makes me just want to just see you and hear you again and again and again, because it's always fresh. Even the same poems again, always fresh. It doesn't even matter.
Thank you all. This is really great to hear. It's really important, I think, to just hear about organic, on the ground developments of friendship around art and poetry, and how that kind of translates into creating space and community for others, because I think it's been the lifeblood of poetry. I was talking to some undergrad students the other day. It's just, poetry is both very solitary in this one way, and then it's got this huge social component at the same time. But the organization that happens without institutions is so just feels like the life of moving things forward, right? To hear them and have worked together. Is there anything else that we that you want to sort of throw out there before we call it a day? Or does anybody have a question? Fong always has a question. Sorry, Fong.
Hi, Dao.
Hi.
Hi, Coleman. Hi, Shayla, who I'm missing, Samiya, and it's just terrific. It's I always felt poetry is the most dangerous arsenal we have in the rail, and that's how we fight people who try to destroy language. And that's what we're doing to preserve, to amplify its complexity and beauty, all of it, really, dignity. And, you know, thinking about this now, because I was in and out, just some disruption with phone call and whatnot, but the T-Bone Walker song, you know, and some came to mind, the great Stormy Monday, COVID Stormy Monday, and we should call this gathering here really Stormy Wednesday. Storming Wednesday with snapping words, with truth, dignity, and compassion. It's just so terrific. I feel so super nurtured. And so I just, I'm grateful to you all, seriously. We are all grateful to you all. And just please be in touch and keep up the great work you all, because that's how we're gonna fight together through our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Fong.
So I'm just going to say, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, yeah, just poetry as an arsenal to fight for language. I think that language is endangered in this time for sure. So thank you.
Well, I'm just going to say a couple closing things. This reading will be up on the Rails YouTube channel in a matter of a day or two, and the archive of all of these readings and conversations is there, so this can be circulated and watched, rewatched. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, there'll be a conversation on bodies and masks as NFTs, where art, blockchain, and capitalism collide, featuring Brendan Fernandez, Dred Scott, and Charlotte Kent. And then we'll conclude with a poetry reading by Shanika McIntosh. You can turn your microphones on and say goodbye as you leave. And thank you again so much, everybody, Dao, Stephanie, Samia, Shayla, and Coleman, for giving us your work and time today.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having us.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Hey, Charlie.
Thank you, Dao.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Nick.
Thank you, Dao.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a happy stormy Wednesday.
Oh yeah, we should rename the series now. Instead of the Radical Poetry series, it should be the Stormy Wednesday Poetry series. I think we have to consider that.
Bye. Thank
All right,
you
well,
so
take care. Be
much, all
safe,
of you.
everyone. Thanks so much. Thanks, Dao.